You are listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
Well, it's that time of year again. Love is in the air. No, it's not St. Valentine's Day as we're recording on the eve of Valentine's Day. No, it's a love of a different kind. It's the love of money as we are completing day 2 of free agent frenzy of the CFL season. It is the Rouge Radio Podcast, episode 370, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. My name is Robert Dalton, live from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and joining me, my good friend, Mr. Tony Allen from Medicine Hat, Alberta. Tony, how are things, my man?
Oh, they're going pretty good. It's been an exciting 24 hours in the CFL community and around, so we're just kind of drinking it all in and kind of wrapping my head around everything that's happened in the league. So we'll see what we come up with today.
Yeah, we got a great show. We're going to talk about, obviously, the first 48 hours of free agent frenzy. We'll read your emails. And you know what? Let's start off with this one here. It's because it's we don't want to take too much of your time because, trust me, there's a lot to talk about. The AAFL started over the weekend. Did you get a chance to check it out?
I watched as much as I could. I'll admit the first game was on Hockey Day in Canada, and I've got a young guy that really, really loves hockey, so we kind of had mostly those games running all day, but when he went down for a nap and I had an opportunity, I put a couple games on and watch what I could. It was watchable football. Not really sure what I'm supposed to say about a league that's only played its first 4 games in its entire existence over the course of the weekend. So I don't know. Right now, all I can basically do is comment on there was a couple of good plays. I don't know any of the players. I don't seem to have built any kind of emotion to any team in the league right now. No one really stood out as something that I would like to watch for, 10 weeks, 18 weeks, however long their season is. But, I took some in. Well, there's a lot of football left to be played. I really don't want to make any predictions, any statements, any, prophecies when the league has only played one weekend ever. So that's just me.
No, I completely agree. I think it's way too early to be critical or optimistic of a league. I mean, obviously they're starting out of the gate perfectly. They've got a TV deal. They've got obviously some big market cities and some recognizable names if you're a CFL fan. Obviously, if you're close to teams like Winnipeg and Saskatchewan who have had players on neg lists for our negotiating list for a couple of years now, those players are getting a chance to shine at the semi-big level, so to speak. It's not to the NFL level, but obviously anything on, was it CBS? I completely forgot what network they're on. It might be CBS.
Yeah, I think it was CBS.
Yeah, they're getting the chance to do that on a major cable network, so that, good on them. And you know what? As other people have said, football is football. It makes for a very entertaining 12 months. The Super Bowl ends, and here comes the AAFL. Obviously, next year, the XFL is going to be making its second debut, taking us right into May and June when the CFL starts. So, if you're a football fan, I tell you what, if you're a fan of both, of hockey and football, man, you must be, oh man, this must be heck for you right now. But if you're a fan of football, man, you cannot ask for a better schedule than what everybody in the down south and what the CFL is giving into right now, because it's like 12 months, almost 12 months of straight football. You can't ask for anything better than that. Let's go to the topic du jour, I guess we can call it now. I'm just on Twitter right now, so I might be a little bit distracted here, people. But the last thing I don't want is for us to be going off the air and then find out there was a big signing. Now, we are recording at close to 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, so highly unlikely we're going to be getting any kind of last-minute signings for today. Any key signings will happen sometime tomorrow, if there will be any happening tomorrow. Usually we go to the west to the east, and I had this planned, but we're going to go to the east to the west because, man, I think there's a little bit more content. Now, on day 2 of free agency, the East was a little bit more active, and I'm talking about the Ottawa Redblacks and the Toronto Argonauts, but we're gonna go grade these teams, and we're not gonna go in depth because I think that'll be a completely different show when we cover our 9 teams in 9 weeks. Let's start off with Montreal. Tony, in a broad description, I guess 2 minutes or less, what would you grade the Montreal Alouettes free agency so far after 2 days?
Well, I think the biggest name that obviously jumped out with me is getting Loeffler in Montreal. I think was a very good land for them, just because he helps your racers a lot. You get a Canadian on the defensive side of the ball, and he is just a great football player. I think, to me personally, that's the pickup I enjoyed most from Montreal. I thought they did really good, and also they added to their receiving core a little bit as well. And I would have liked to see them give more help to Johnny Manziel or Pipkin, whoever's going to start in Montreal, a little bit more help, because I think that's what we harped on the most. If they can do that with the remaining time they have in this free agency, which is obviously a long time, but I don't know what's out there at their disposal. But right now, I liked what Montreal did, because honestly, I don't think they've got the worst quarterbacking situation in the East. So as an overall grade, being able to land some of the players they were able to do, I gave Montreal a B-, because I don't think they were idle and lazy enough to deserve anything in the C range.
You know what? They were a lot better than they were last year. Now, obviously, they were the team that really needed a lot of Canadian depth too. I'm with you. I love what the pickup of Taylor Loeffler. I'm not too sure his value met or what his current value was worth what Montreal paid him. But again, that's free agency for you, right? They didn't overspend outside of that compared to what they've done in years past. Now, what I judge free agency is not what you don't do. It's obviously what you do, and not necessarily the amount of people that you acquire, but what kind of pieces that you did or that you acquired. Montreal really needed some help on the offensive line. Now, they'd added a piece there. I don't think it was enough. They did add DeVere Posey. They re-signed B.J. Cunningham. The fact that there is still questions on the quarterbacking side, and you really didn't do a lot to help Johnny Manziel aside. Now, I'm not talking about loading up with a lot of offensive weapons. I'm talking about protection, because Johnny Manziel spent a lot of time running around, and if he didn't run around, he got sacked. And I don't think that they fixed that enough, as much as I would have liked, and a lot of Alouettes fans. They did a good job. I'm not saying that they're a complete gong show that Kavis Reed has been in the last couple of years. I just don't think they did enough, maybe enough to be in third place in the East to avoid a Western crossover. But I guess that's something that we'll talk when we deal with the Alouettes in our 9 teams in 9 weeks. My grade for them will be a C+. I like what you said, Tony, is that possibly it was just they weren't lazy, they were up front, they were meticulous, they just didn't add the piece, the big piece that I was kind of hoping for. As we move on to the Ottawa Red Blacks. And I think if you're gonna label each team a winner or a loser, I think the biggest loser of free agency, no matter what they did today, because it wasn't a lot, no matter what they do, the Ottawa Red Blacks will be labeled the big-time loser of the offseason. I guess that doesn't mean anything in February. Come talk to me in July or August when the season gets into shape. But, Tony, what do you give the Ottawa Red Blacks?
Yeah, I gave them a big D because just sitting there watching everything leave Ottawa, nothing come back, and especially it's not so much that they left, it was a quarterback in Trevor Harris who, when the Grey Cup ended, we just dismissed any idea of him leaving. It was a non-starter. Listen, when we wanted to race out and talk about all the QBs available in free agency this year, I mean, we waffled on Riley, but for the most part, I was like, Bo's staying in Calgary. Trevor Harris is staying in Ottawa. Let's just ignore those three right now because nothing's going to happen. And so we believe Trevor Harris was so married to that community in that city. It makes me wonder if there's something inside of that organization that would make good players just walk away like that, especially someone like Trevor Harris, who clearly loved the community. So I just based that on there's trouble in Ottawa. I don't know what's going on. And for the whole day overall, just with those three key losses, I give them a D on the day.
I'm going to go, again, this is like the second straight team. Will I give them a lower grade than you? I'm giving them an F. And and here's the thing. The Ottawa Red Blacks, I mean, you're going to lose players in free agency. I mean, that's what free agency is for, right? You're always going to look for the best available deal for you, right, in the CFL. That's just, you should expect that. When you lose 3 big-time players, okay, that'll happen. When you lose the best player, the best available at your position, and you lose 3 of them, that's something huge. Your best quarterback, Trevor Harris, gone. William Powell, your best running back, gone. Greg Ellingson, your best receiver, gone. Sir Vincent Rogers, your best offensive lineman, gone. That's all gone. And what did you replace him with? Well, Moses Madu. No disrespect to Moses, but he's no William Powell. You still got Brad Sinopoli. But I don't think Brad Sinopoli is going to be the guy that's going to carry this team, especially when you consider who's the quarterback. You haven't replaced Sir Vincent Rogers. You've added an offensive lineman, but you're not going. To me, that's kind of like replacing Chris Cuthbert with Rod Black, right? I mean, maybe that's a too big of a gap that to compare it to that, but you didn't replace him. You keep in mind the Ottawa Red Blacks are without Deontay Spencer too, right? He went to the NFL, so if you're going to get Spencer back, it's going to be a while. So for that, and they added Jonathan Jennings, who really hasn't been good since 2016. Not only did you not replace the players that left, you attempted to replace them with huge question marks. And that's not how free agency works sometimes. And when it came to the overall scope of things, Ottawa went from hosting the Eastern Final, runner-up to the Grey Cup champion Calgary Stampeders, to, I know hindsight's 2020, it's in a 4-team division and a 9-team league. It does not look good for Ottawa. It legitimately at this time looks like Ottawa's going to finish 4th in the East, and that's behind the Toronto Argonauts, which we'll start off with this one next. Toronto Argonauts, very quiet on day 1, making some very nice moves on day 2. Tony, what do you give these guys?
For the Toronto Argonauts, you know what? They did good. You know, they're still a team that's in a bit of a transition now with their head coach. I mean, I hope they're not going to mess around with whatever's going on with Ricky Ray, but that's not what this specific show is about. And although I did bring it up a little bit with Montreal, I don't want to kind of forecast what I think the team is going to do in the future with their pieces. I just ranked on what those teams did to help themselves out. I think Toronto did okay. I don't know if they particularly caught any of the biggest fish, guys like Micah Awe and Tyrell Sutton. These are guys. I think they're good. I think they're better than what the players they're going to replace that the Argonauts had last season. Sean Lemon goes back, very good. Kevin Fogg comes in. That is a fantastic addition for the Toronto Argonauts as well. I didn't really know if I wanted to run out and say Toronto did really, really well, but I think they picked up some nice pieces here that is going to work in Toronto. And I was just waffling if I wanted to either put them in a C+ range or a B-. Clearly between the two of us, I'm the bleeding heart here that doesn't want to feel bad in my grading system. But I mean, overall, I don't know how competitive it is. But on the day with the pieces they added, I think I'm in the territory of giving Toronto probably a C+, because a C doesn't sound great, but I feel like if I put a plus in there, it sounds happy. So we'll give them a happy C+ for the Toronto Argonauts on how they handled the first day.
You know what? I'm going to agree with that. I'm actually going to agree with that. I thought sometimes it's not. You take a look at, it's not quality, it's quantity. And Toronto on day 2, they added quite a lot of pieces, right? And you're questioning, well, they added a lot of running backs. Well, that creates competition at training camp. Well, they still have some question marks at receiver outside of S.J. Green and Jimmy Ralph. And Jimmy Ralph being that top Canadian tier. I mean, that in itself is really a question mark too sometimes. On the defensive side, with a defensive-minded head coach, you knew that was going to come to a hell, right? It's just amazing that right now you're looking at the defensive side that really had some huge question marks going into free agent, and you didn't really anticipate these kind of moves. You bring in Kevin Fogg, you bring in Toby Antigua out of Saskatchewan, had a fantastic year last year. Micah Awe from BC, again Sean Lemon going back. There's a huge groundswell in Toronto right now on the defensive side, and now whether or not that equals success. I mean, granted, you're in the East. You went from third in the East and almost fourth because of Montreal, and to potentially fighting for second right now, just because of the anticipation of Ottawa falling back, and who knows what Hamilton is. So I love what Argonauts did. They were a meticulous team going into day 2. They knew what they want. They added on the defensive side to shore up that side. Still some question marks on the offensive side outside of the running back. James Franklin under new offensive leadership is hopefully is going to do better this year. However, year 1 as a full-time starter after Ricky Ray was injured didn't bode so well. Can't imagine, regardless if it's a different offensive scheme, that anything will come out any different. But as far as off-season goes, I do like what Toronto did. I, too, am going to give them a C+, just because on both sides it was meh, but they added some key pieces. So, yeah, the plus side to make everybody seem a little bit happy makes that decision a little bit better. Hamilton, I want to say they were decimated, but they made some very big moves as well. Most notably, they added Ndeleke out of Calgary, Jordan Davis from Calgary. They re-signed Simone Lawrence going into free agency, but they lost Don Unamba. They lost Larry Dean going to Edmonton. I think that's a big loss. Tony, I'll let you start off with this one.
I gave Hamilton an A on the day because they didn't go crazy, and they didn't particularly need to go crazy. They were going to lose some pieces. I thought the pieces they brought back in were very good for them. And as a Stampeders fan, they're going to love Jagarrett Davis. I think that was a wonderful pickup for them. They more concentrated on keeping the team that they had, because to me that's championship caliber. You know, you look at some of the best teams and they're the ones that can add on to their existing cores. And I really enjoyed that, you know, Hamilton knew they were going to lose pieces, and, you know, they just quietly went out and brought pieces back in, and it's only started. So from a free agent standpoint, it was a good Tiger Cats team, and they found a way to weather the first couple of days of free agency. So overall, I gave them an A for not going and doing anything ridiculous, which they have known to been do in the past when they were desperate to win that, well, the Grey Cup overall. I was going to say just the Eastern Division, but when they were desperate to win that Grey Cup in every free agency, they ran out and tried to buy everybody. This year, I didn't get that sense from them, and I really enjoyed how they started free agency. So overall, for in essence, staying pat and only filling up holes where they needed to, or at the time where they felt they could, I gave them an A for the day.
Some key news here, just before I get into my CFL news. Obviously, the CFL news account, paraphrasing Dave Naylor from TSN, that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are taking a second push at Darrell Walker, the key free agent receiver out of Edmonton. So it is believed to be between Winnipeg and Toronto. Saskatchewan has been mentioned. I don't see, given their situation, and we'll talk about that, how Darrell Walker makes that a likable destination. But again, we'll talk about that. My thought for this for Hamilton, I can echo your sentiments right now, Tony, regarding the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I think obviously, yeah, they've had they've had the pieces offensively. They didn't lose too much there. Defensively, they brought back Delvin Breaux, which is key. The defensive line they have there. I'm concerned about the linebacking core, and what that does is that it makes you susceptible to the run a lot and the short passing games, which is pretty much the bread and butter in the Eastern Division. So yeah, I mean, Hamilton was the one team that I thought, you know what, they're going to be quiet. Last year, their only move was Liram Haurelahu, and I convinced myself that they were the winner of the free agency because they didn't have to do anything. And well, I mean, hindsight's 2020. Haurelahu wasn't exactly the best kicker at some points. I just didn't think that they probably made the right moves. They made good moves, and I don't recall a bad move. But I think that there was a couple of more additions that they could have done to outset the linebacker deletions that they're going to have to experience. So for that, I think I'm going to give Hamilton a B+ on that one, just a tad grade lower than what you gave them. All right, let's go to the Western Division. Let's start off with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Tony.
Oh, me again.
Yeah.
Something tells me you're winding up for something big here. But
no.
no, and you know what? I'm gonna put them in a better boat than the Hamilton Tiger Cats. This is a team that essentially didn't need to do anything. Obviously, because I gave Montreal marks for getting Loeffler. I mean, maybe it's a dock for Winnipeg, but I mean, this is a team that I've liked for several years now. As far as the potential in that organization, and obviously you're closer, so you'll agree with me or disagree with me in more depth, but this isn't a team that needed to run out and do anything really drastic if they didn't have to. If they wanted to save money, they're a team that could sit back, watch all the other teams throw around the huge cash, and maybe sneak in there and get some deals here or there. I also like the idea that there was 3 quarterbacks that were chasing all of the money. And actually, no, I want to withdraw that. They weren't chasing all of the money. The money was chasing these 3 quarterbacks, and they all landed where they needed to be. And now you've got several teams on the outside looking in that probably don't find their quarterback situation looking as good as BC, Hamilton, and Calgary right now, except the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who have 2 good quarterbacks sitting there, and now they can sit back, and if they want to, pluck whatever they want from any other team out there if they get really desperate for a quarterback. Maybe entire Eastern Division, I'm looking at you, and that's all due respect to Mazzoli in Hamilton. So I think it was a very sly day for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and I think it was the right play by not going out and doing anything extremely insane and throwing around tons of cash. I think that was exactly the free agent start that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers needed, so I also gave them an A.
I wasn't as quite nice. Now, obviously there's a little bit of a personal attachment to here, so, I might have been a little bit too hard on them. But going into that, you knew that Loeffler was gone. You knew that Suk Chung was gone. The Matthias Gosen retirement kind of caught, obviously, everybody outside of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers off guard. So those are three national starters that you had to replace, and I'm not, and they didn't replace any of them in free agency. Now, you could talk. Now, I'm going to leave the offensive line out of it because I think they actually have the depth. Michael Couture, a lot of upside when he was taken 10th overall in the 2016 draft. Suk Chung replaced by Jeff Gray, who probably was noted the top player in the 2017 draft and probably would have been taken first overall had he not had NFL aspirations. So he takes over Suk Chung's spot. I'm not really concerned with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers offensive line, but what they lost, they did not replace. And then to be honest, if you don't come close to it or even or equal out the deletions, to me it's a fail. And I'm not going to give them a failing grade, but it's a huge fail. Now, they went out and got Willie Jefferson, who was the best pass rusher in the CFL last year. And who's behind him? The defensive player of the year last year in Adam Bighill. So you've added some big time pieces on that defensive side that really in the back nine of last year really started to gel and really started to playing lights out football. They added Winston Rose today, but the one thing I really wanted to see the Winnipeg Blue Bombers do, and they didn't do it, was replace the Canadian content that they lost and get a big time receiver. Now, I like the pieces that they did. They didn't do what I thought that they would do. So I'd have to get the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Not a failing grade, and I don't think that they did enough to warrant a D, but they didn't replace anything. So I'm going to give the Winnipeg Blue Bombers a C-.
And that concludes week 1 of our 9 teams in 9 weeks. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers. No, I'm just joking.
All right, let's move on to Saskatchewan Roughriders. And I know that you have your own take on this one, so I'll start this one here for you. I'm going to give the Saskatchewan Roughriders an F. And you know what? No, I'm not. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to give them a D, a flat-out D, because there was 3 quarterbacks, key quarterbacks that were free agents: Trevor Harris, Bo Levi Mitchell, and Mike Riley. Now, the law of averages, because you didn't have a quarterback, you have this really good defense, which is still a good defense, but it's going to be taken down a notch because of its deletions. But it's still a good defense. I'm not going to take anything away from over there. Your offense so far took a step back because, A, you pretty much said, oh, Zach Claris is going to test free agents. We're going to make a monster offer towards Mike Riley. Well, that was when Chris Jones was at the helm. Well, Chris Jones leaves, Craig Dickinson's in, Jeremy O'Day's in, and who did the Saskatchewan Roughriders come back with? Zach Claris. Now, they added William Powell, which is a nice ad. It's a decent ad. I don't hate that move. It's not what you needed. You still are without a bona fide number 1 receiver. You have a good amount of number 3s, but you don't have a number 1 receiver. And I imagine Naaman Roosevelt's going to sign once he figures out where Darrell Walker's going to end up. That's I don't have any sources. That is clearly speculation. But I imagine if Darrell Walker ends up in Winnipeg, Roosevelt's probably going to have to either go back to Saskatchewan or go to Toronto. Saskatchewan's was awful offensively last year, and I think they might have actually gotten worse. And so to be honest with you, Saskatchewan, 2 days. Again, it's not July or August, it's February. But after 2 days, come on, dude, you knew your sore spots and you didn't do anything about it, and you brought back Zach Collaros, and to me that's why you get a D. Almost on the verge of giving them a failing grade. Tony.
Yes, I mean, it was funny yesterday. I'm in my technical training right now for my career, so I happened to be in class when this was all going out. The guy beside me was a Saskatchewan Roughrider fan, so him and I, the conversations we had over the course of the afternoon were pretty interesting and fun. And obviously when, we saw the news that Saskatchewan had thrown their hat into the Bo Levi Mitchell ring, there was some joking and some talking. And I mean, his first concern was damn it, like if we lose this gamble, they're in a lot of trouble. Now, obviously on the defense, they did really good with the big addition they did. Micah Johnson obviously is a tremendous. You've got to give Saskatchewan the bonus points there for landing that. That's very good. Good on you. But I mean, it's a good thing you beefed up your defense, because they are going to be on the field for probably about 45 to 50 minutes a night, because that is an atrocious offense that they have there. And I think from a realistic standpoint, you never had a shot at Bo Levi Mitchell. And even when you saw some of the receivers book it out of Calgary, there could have been an argument made, how good is that receiving core in Calgary, that Bo Levi Mitchell will want to stay. And I don't think Bo Levi Mitchell was ever going to leave Calgary. I think he managed to squeeze a few more pennies out of John Huffnagel, and he was never going to go to any of those destinations. It was a bargaining chip, but for whatever reason, I mean, O'Day I'm assuming put all of his eggs in that basket. Maybe an unrealistic expectation of how it could end out. Overall on the day, you've already had a good defense. You're adding more pieces to a really good defense, and I hope it can carry you through another regular season like it did last year, because that is all they had last year. And another year older and another year unsuccessful as a whole for Zach Collaros. I mean, that is not a good quarterback combo. I'm not really sure what's out there after the big three that could make it better. Like, really, you can't make up a magical quarterback when the other top three went out of play. But overall, Saskatchewan did not have a very good day overall. Even their top receiving addition was not really that good. A 30-some-year-old receiver, when you had very good ones in Duron Carter and Roosevelt. I think it was not a great day for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They've been able to find something in open camps and training camps, but I gave them a D+ because I didn't want to be super negative guy on here today. So there is a lot of pluses on there to try and balance out bad grades, but Saskatchewan was, as much as I love their big addition on defense, overall that did not. It was a really nice splash, and it'll make headlines, but that did not make Saskatchewan a hell of a lot better than they were last year. So I think they deserve a D+. The plus is just for Micah Johnson.
Let's go to the. You know what? Let's leave the most active teams on day one last. Let's go to the reigning Grey Cup champions, the Calgary Stampeders. I'll let you start off with that one.
You know what? I'm going to make this one the easiest one. Calgary had one job to do on day one of free agency, and that was sign Bo Levi Mitchell. It was tough to see receivers go. It was tough to see defensive players go. But you know what? This is the discussion we have every single year. And basically, you could just record me and put me on loop every spring when it comes to the Calgary Stampeders. They can't get better. You are the Grey Cup champions. You're the West Division champions. You had the best record in football again. You produce the best football players. You can't get better. It is not possible for the Calgary Stampeders to go into free agency and get better. You can't. You're only going to lose people and then try and replace them later on. So Calgary was not going to get better. Your one job, sign Bo Levi Mitchell. You did. Is the team better or farther ahead? I don't know. But simply by signing Bo Levi Mitchell, you get a B. Obviously not an A because we lost some great receivers. But honestly, Hufnagel will just go to his drawer of excellent receivers and throw them out on the field. And guess what? Calgary has 4,000-yard receivers again in 2019. Obviously, I say that in jest. Don't write down Tony predicts 4,000-yard receivers in Calgary. Your mission was to sign Bo Levi Mitchell. You did it. A B for the Stampeders.
I sorry, like my immature mind has a visual of John Hufnagel going to his desk and like, just going through all the paperwork. All right, here we go. And it just takes out like one big 6'3" college standout that next becomes the Rookie of the Year in 2019. I don't know why that just makes me laugh. Maybe it's because I'm tired. Who knows? You know what? I can echo your sentiments here because we're going into free agency each year. Calgary will maybe add one, maybe two. I think the biggest name that they've added in years past was Bakari Grant in 2016. I think that's I literally, Jerome Messam last year, but I mean, they're never active on free agency, so you know that they're going to lose someone. So I mean, I was really tempted when I was grading everything out here. I was really tempted to say, you know what, A+, because they don't do anything. Yeah. And you're right. The biggest thing that they really needed to do was retain Bo Levi Mitchell, make sure he doesn't get anywhere, and if he does, maybe try to throw some money at Mike Riley. Who knows? But I mean, we knew that Riley was gone, so Mitchell was had a big spotlight, and it was a big, Hufnagel felt that it was urgent to pony up the money to retain him. I mean, that's your key thing right there. I mean, you just don't let him walk away, especially to another team in the West if it was going to go to Saskatchewan. But I mean, if I have to be fair, based on the curve that I've been grading the other 8 teams, they lost some players. They had to keep Bo Levi Mitchell. They re-signed a lot of their players, which is great. So it's not going to be an A+, but I think I'm just going to give them about an A, maybe an A-, based on the curve that I've been grading everything. And I have to keep things consistent. I'm really going to have to give the Calgary Stampeders a simple A.
Yeah,
nothing
you
big,
look at
nothing fancy.
You look at their contracts on day one. Bo Levi Mitchell, Eric Rogers, Cordero Law, well, maybe day 2. All he did was sign guys they already have. Like, keep the team intact. Don't run out all crazy like. And it's worked for the Stampeders up to this point, so we'll see what happens. I mean, who knows what he'll find at the draft? Who knows what he'll find at open camps in the United States? And now, who knows what he's going to... You know what? Hufnagel is going to find the first German wide receiver to catch 1,000 yards in the Canadian football, or the first Austrian 1,000-yard running back. If anyone can go over to Europe now under CFL 2.0 and find, a Finnish linebacker that dominates during the regular season, can shut down other teams, it's going to be John Hufnagel.
9! No, I'm joking. All right, let's go to the Edmonton Eskimos, and I'll start off with this one. You know how we were talking about the Ottawa Redblacks, and I gave them an F because they didn't even come close to replacing the guys that they lost? The Edmonton Eskimos lost some guys. They lost Bryant Mitchell to the NFL. Darrell Walker, they just couldn't pay him. They lost Mike Riley. So they went out and replaced them with Trevor Harris. They replaced Bryant Mitchell with Greg Ellingson. They replaced J.C. Sherritt with Larry Dean, Don Unamba, and Javon Santos Knox. They were active. They were completely active. And because they managed to replace guys and then some, I honestly, and again, this is February. I'm not saying that this is going to award them anything, but in regards to free agents, which is meant to plug in holes, they had some serious holes going into this year, and I think they plugged them. May not be perfect, but they did them. And to be honest with you, I think Edmonton did almost close to perfect, and I'm going to have to give them their A+. I think they're the only A+ team in free agency this year, and I know that might be a spoiler alert because we have one team left, but I think they did what they needed to do, and it looked completely bleak. The idea that Mike Riley was leaving Edmonton had everybody canceling their season tickets in Edmonton, and all of a sudden they're on their knees saying they're not worthy to general manager Brock Sutherland. My God, did the tables turn in a matter of hours. Tony, your take.
Yeah, they definitely knew there would be backlash to moving Mike Riley. And honestly, I hope nobody is putting that on the Edmonton Eskimos organization because, I mean, there was a lot of rumblings way back in November that Mike Riley was already on his way to BC. So, I mean, you can't really put that on the Eskimos. But what they did was a tremendous job of basically saying, fans, we can't keep Mike Riley. That's his decision. We're going to offer him, but we can't keep a man here doesn't want to be here, and that's fine. I mean, you shouldn't feel bad for Mike Riley. This is a league. I had a couple of conversations with this, and there's players that are going to go where they chase the money, and there's players that are going to go where they can be home. Andrew Harris went home. Sinopoli went home. Andy Fantus went home. Bo Levi Mitchell, in essence, he went home. That's where his new family is from. They're having another baby. That baby is also going to be from Calgary. I mean, Bo Levi Mitchell has a tattoo of the Rocky Mountains on his forearm. That would have been the ultimate ex-girlfriend tattoo if he had packed up and went to Toronto and Saskatchewan. So Bo Levi Mitchell went home. Mike Riley went home. I would not put that on this. But what the Eskimos did do is they said, we're going to do our best to make this loss up to you. And they just ran out and they spent. And the good thing for the Eskimos is you don't have to be under the salary cap right now. You just need to go and get some guys and worry about making the salary cap come June. So, yes, Edmonton was super active. They went out and got everything they could because if they can't have Mike Riley, and to be honest with you, you can't replace Mike Riley and Trevor Harris, I am sorry, he is a major step back. But I will save that for 9 teams in 9 weeks. But the appearance of it is going out and doing everything you can to replace them. So whatever happens, I will save that for 9 teams in 9 weeks and just give Edmonton their due for having a great start to free agency and give them an A.
Not an A+ to make it look pretty?
Not because Trevor Harris, no. Trevor Harris knocks it down to an A. But again, I'll explain that all later. We don't need to fight about that now.
All right, let's go to the BC Lions, which had the whole fanfare the night before because it was reported that Mike Riley was going to leave Edmonton for BC, and who knew that was going to trigger a huge list of attractions. Obviously, getting Mike Riley is going to improve your squad. Retaining Brian Burnham, adding Duron Carter. On the defensive side, I know Devon Claybrooks is a defensive guru that he is. They added Aaron Grimes in the secondary, who's going to probably play closer, maybe as a strong side linebacker. He's versatile; he could do that. What I'm concerned about, and you mentioned it because I wanted to talk about this, and it's kind of like a side table here, okay? Let me digress here a little bit. This is free agency. Teams can go out and sign every available free agent known to man. There's deals because there is intention of them wanting to have them start on week 1. There's no salary cap until week 1 of the CFL season. So anybody who's saying, where do they get the money? Where does he get the money? Where do they get the money? You can stop that right now. That cap does not get enforced until week 1. in training camp, you're limited to what, 72 roster spots on your training camp, not including draft picks. But I digress about that. You don't have to worry about that. That's still 4 months away. Okay, so stop saying that. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest right now because every time Edmonton signs someone, I heard, where do they get the money? Every time BC signs someone, where do they get the money? Are they operating with a different cap? No, because the cap's not enforced yet. All right? That's going on. I do have to say that there has to be an allocation of money concern right now with BC. Because when you allocate a certain portion of your salary towards a small portion of your roster, to me that becomes a concern to me, because now you're going to heavily rely on your scouting staff to fill in the rest of your roster. Now, I might be a little bit exaggerating about a small amount of the roster space with that huge roster, the financial wise. But the point is still the same. Having said that, they did a good job. They grabbed who they wanted. I am concerned, but as far as free agency goes, they did a great job. They brought out the biggest fish that they could find in Aaron Grimes, Jerron Carter, and Mike Riley. And for that, it's not perfect. It's not A+. I don't think that they really had a big holes to fill. Also, Suk Chong, which is hopefully they had to give him a lot of money, because God forbid if that $700,000 quarterback becomes injured, you are screwed, because you don't have enough money to replace that guy, not even in trade. So you got to shore up, give this guy weapons, and protect Mike Riley's his keister, because I don't see a plan B in BC in the near future. But I like what they did, but because of the allocation of their finances, I'm going to have to give them just a flat out A. Tony.
Boy, you sure did change gears from two teams that did the exact same thing, and one was a miracle workers and the other ones weren't. That puts up that's a head scratcher. But I mean, sorry. I mean, BC did an absolutely fabulous move with getting Mike Riley, and if I can take my fan hat off and put my football fan hat on, I mean, Mike Riley is the best quarterback in the Canadian Football League, and BC got him. He was the biggest fish on the market. He's the team that everyone would want, and if you say you didn't want to pay that money for Mike Riley, then you're an idiot, because your team is exponentially better once Mike Riley is under center. Now, Mike Riley barely needs weapons, and they've given him that. All you need to do is put an offensive line in front of Mike Riley, because he got absolutely rocked all last season in Edmonton. Keep Mike Riley off of his back, and that is the most dangerous team in the Canadian Football League heading into 2019. They did a fantastic job. I don't care about their money. They're not spending my money, so they can do whatever the hell they want with it right now. And you know what? If they're in a hole come July, nobody in the Western Division, or basically CFL, is going to feel bad for them. And my job and the purpose of the show is not to predict what's going to happen for BC in the future. It's just to grade them on the start of free agency, an absolute home run. They are the only team I gave full marks, an A+ to, the BC Lions.
Ah, all right. So we're going to fight. We're definitely going to fight.
Need some fight.
All right. Well, let's get on to our emails.
For me. I even did my knee-jerk reaction power rankings. Well, not my knee-jerk power, my knee-jerk reaction standings for the East and the West. These are just pure knee-jerk reactions. I did them like at 4:00 on yesterday, just so I could do it on pure emotions, pure knee-jerk reaction, unjustified panic standings for the regular season. I don't know. I could give them to him if you want to hear it, but it's going to cause a lot of anger, despite the fact I'm trying to emphasize how BS these standings are. I'm going to upset somebody, so I don't know if I want to say them or not, or if you want to hear them, but I can tell you how I have the divisions ranked right now, just off of free agency. You want to hear them?
Yeah, let's give them away.
Okay, I gave Hamilton winning the East with Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, how the East wraps out. Out in the West, I know, this is what's going to set it off. And as soon as Joe hears this, I'm sure I'm going to get ripped apart. BC, Calgary, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Saskatchewan.
Oh, wow. Well, Edmonton did better.
Pure BS, pure knee-jerk reaction. That's based on nothing but wow. Because every year, one team goes all out. This year, two teams went out. And it barely works for the one team that does it. It can't work for two teams. So we'll see. And with Trevor Harris, I don't see that being as fantastic as everything they put around him. It better be able to make up for a lot, but that's why I did that. Without going into 9 teams in 9 weeks, that's why I did that. So I don't know if you want to hold on to that and stew in it for a while until 9 teams start, or if I've just opened up Pandora's box here.
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweet out a spoiler alert and tag Joe right now as we get on.
I can't win with that. I can't even.
Let's get to some emails here as we finish our grading. Darlene from Yorkton, she sent this in a couple of days ago, so this would have been before, so may have been predicting. You guys love the show. Who do you guys think will be the biggest free agent bust? Tony, anybody that comes up?
I answered that question.
No.
I think I just asked Trevor Harris. Trevor Harris is going to be the most disappointing thing about the 2019 season.
Oh wow!
I think the West is going to eat him alive. I think it is a rude awakening. He should have stayed out east.
I am.
More to come in April.
I'm going to say Greg Ellenson. I think based on his value, I'm not, this is no disrespect, but I think Greg Ellenson is going to be the big free agent bust. I think on that team. So who's the receiver in Edmonton right now? They've got obviously Ellenson. They don't have Mitchell. Zylstra's not there obviously. They got Kenny Stafford, Kenny Shaw, and Vidal Hazelton is still a free agent right now. Yeah, you know what? You might be right on the Trevor Harris thing just based on the hype, but I think Greg Ellenson, based on his contract, I think he'll reach 1,000 yards, but he'll be lucky to be top 10 in receiving this year, I think. And again, that's no disrespect. I just don't think he's going to match the hype of his contract. I
love the tone of your voice during that. Because it almost felt like you were actually playing games in your head as you were talking and watching incomplete passes and watching touchdowns. Like you were talking like you were actually watching the plays already in your head unfold, or you're having an epiphany while you said that. Was very good, bringing the drama to your answer.
If you had a front row seat in my head, you could see the little hamster on the wheel just going around and around, trying to think of an explanation, or even as a player. Let's get to the. Oh, do we have another one here?
Ooh, I hope so.
You know what? This is the problem with not printing these out. Having to go into my phone and go back into the email. And I was also tweeting at Joe Belineski, so that caused for a lot of things. You know what? While I look for it, Tony, any final thoughts?
No, exciting first day. Absolutely. So much drama. As much as I was confident Bo Levi Mitchell was going to say, and it got dramatic there at the end before the signing. I have to admit I wavered a little bit. I waffled, but I mean it was such a fun 4 hours. I think between when free agency kicked off at 10 a.m. my time to when Bo finally signed, I think after 2:00. That was just, it was so nice to see that kind of hype around free agency. During my lunch, the guy I said I was following with, we put that Marsh and Mallow on for their Twitter feed on Periscope as well, and we listened to them. It's just fantastic coverage. I mean, hopefully one day we'll get a 8-hour show on TSN or something, or at least live broadcast something through CFL. So I absolutely love how that is going. And then a quick word too on how much I absolutely love what Randy Ambrosie is doing with CFL 2.0. I don't want to ramble on because I can praise this thing a whole lot. It's so great to see football federations coming together for the sport. As where we see the NFL, I've said on several occasions, it's an American sport for Americans, played by Americans, solely for Americans. And when they sell their sport around the world, you're watching Americans play American football in your country. And it is still 100% American. They can play as many football games in London, but they are selling Americans playing American football with American cities to people overseas. This initiative to make football a global game is fantastic. We're creating more of an NHL and basically every single soccer league in the world, and soccer is the biggest. I apologize to the purists that wish I would have called it football. But, you're creating something that the whole world needs, that what the best leagues in the world are. And I love going that route. You know what? We will broaden our game. There might be some getting used to not seeing only Americans and a handful of Canadians playing our game. But, the opportunities that it is going to create for Canadian football players when they finish their years in youth sports, I don't know, I still want to call it CIS, but Canadian college football, if they're not ready for the Canadian Football League, imagine the prospects for Canadian football quarterbacks. You're a quarterback not ready for the CFL and you don't want to be a receiver, you don't want to be a DB. Imagine now being able to go overseas and being a starting quarterback somewhere else where maybe you can relate more to that style, that skill level, whatever it is, and eventually come back to Canada. And next thing you know, we have this healthy bumper crop of Canadian quarterbacks that we could never develop here on our own, and doing the exact same thing for other countries. So an absolute tip of the hat. You have to understand how positive. You need to get out of your defensive protectionist attitudes towards sports and only being Canadian, and really seeing how good this is going to be.
Found the email before we get to the final dad joke here. Peter from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Tip to the hat to our listeners at the south of the border. Said, guys, you think that there will ever be a time where a non-quarterback player will ever get quarterback money in free agency? Not a chance. Not a freaking chance. Now, as the cap goes up, maybe they'll get $400,000 at one point, but by then you'll probably have quarterbacks making $1 million per year. You'll never find a player making the same amount as a quarterback. Quarterbacks are the guys, and I think it's time for players on social media that complain about contracts. Looking at you, Derek Dennis. Looking at you. That I think it's time for you to accept that quarterbacks, face of the franchise, will always make more than the next paying athlete on your team. All right, that'll do it for episode 370. Hey, listen, Tony and I were texting each other, and I think it's about time that we push this. SeaGiant.ca, wonderful partners of our program. Make sure to enter, to go to SeaGiant.ca to purchase any sporting event tickets. Use the promo code Rouge for discounts on sporting events. Listen, it's hockey. We're in Canada. The playoffs are heating up. The Winnipeg Jets are going to the playoffs most likely. The Calgary Flames are going to the playoffs most likely. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to the playoffs most likely. Hell, Montreal and Vancouver are on the outside looking in. Hell, Montreal is probably going to make it, and yeah, I'll bite. Edmonton might actually make it as well. But I mean, here comes the Edmonton Oilers fans to say, no, we should have made it 3 months ago. Anyway, enter the promo code Rouge. Support your home team by cheering on, going to buy tickets. Support Canadian podcasts like ourselves by using the promo code Rouge when purchasing those tickets, and supporting a great company like Sea Giant at seagiant.ca. Tony, are you ready for this week's dad joke?
Yes, before I choke to death here on my rant got my throat sore, so go.
All right, let's go. Okay. Did you hear about the kidnapping at school? It's fine. It's fine. He just woke up.
Oh, that took a second. That took a second to register.
All right. For Tony, I'm Dalts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.